My name is Dara, and today I am doing the Authortube Newbie Tag. I have my handy dandy notebook here with all of the answers spelled out, so grab yourself a cup of tea, coffee, your beverage of choice, and let's get into this. Alrighty, so the first question is, how did you find out about Authortube? So it was like 2014, 2015. And this was a few years after I'd gotten into booktube, and some of the booktubers that I was watching were making videos that were blurring into Authortube. I still didn't know what Authortube was, but I remember watching Catty-tastic, and she would make writing craft videos and NaNoWriMo vlogs, so I would watch those. And then I think she somehow, I don't know if she was the one who recommended it, but from her I went to Brandon Sanderson's writing lectures on YouTube, binge watched all of them, and then I guess the YouTube algorithm somehow pointed me in the direction of Jenna Marissi. And I think she was really the first person who used the term Authortube. She was the first exclusive Authortube channel that I had come across, and this was years and years ago. I was Jenna's OG viewer. That means I've been lurking in the shadows of Authortube for almost a decade, and I finally joined the dark side. So the next question is, what genres do you write in? I write primarily in mystery, historical fiction, dark romance, but I have dabbled in YA and questionable fan fiction. Okay, next question. So the third question is, what is your preferred writing tense, POV, and category of story? My preferred writing tense, my default tense is, it's past tense. My point of view that I really enjoy writing the most probably have to be first person, followed by third person. I find that it's easier for me to connect with my characters when I write in first person. It just comes more naturally to me, and I can feel their emotions more. Third person is also for certain things. There's certain stories where you want that distance, and so for that I do like third person, but for most of my stories I do like first person. Oh, and then the third part of this question is, what is your preferred category of story? And that would be adult and new adult. I know some people say new adult is just a subcategory of adult, but new adult has a very different vibe than adult. So I would say new adult would probably be my favorite, followed by adult. Okay, the next question, are you a plotter, pantser, or a plantser? I am a plotter, but as of late I am trying to be a plantser. And the reason for this is because when I was writing my mystery series, my first mystery novel, I had written that so extremely in plotter mode. I had a detailed 50-something page outline that had everything chapter by chapter, scene by scene. I knew exactly what was going to happen. And you know what the good part was? I never got writer's block because I always knew what was supposed to come next. But because of that, it kind of sucked the fun out of everything. Everything just became so predictable, and I was not having fun with it. Writing started to become a chore, oh, I have to write this scene next. I have to write this chapter next. It really just sucked the fun out of it. Just sucked the fun, and I went through a writing funk. And how I was able to get the fun back was my inserted scenes that were nowhere in my outline, and I let my characters basically derail the outline, and I ended up with all of these fun scenes. So then I realized okay, I shouldn't plot so rigidly with such structure. I should leave some wiggle room so that I can go rogue. And I did try pantsing. I did my very first novel when I was 17 years old. I had just graduated high school and I was off to college, and I started writing this fantasy book that was completely pantsed. I had no outline. I had no idea what I was doing. And what happened with that was I ended up with so many disjointed scenes, a very loose plot, and then I kind of had to do a reality check 3 years into writing this novel. I'm like, wow, I started this when I just entered college and now I'm almost graduating, and what do I have to show for it? Like 100,000 words of very loose plot, just very random disjointed scenes, a lot of meandering. That was the vibe of the book. It's just meandering. And I ended up completely scrapping that book, but I'm glad I went through that process because I had to first off get the bad writing out of my system, and also find out that pantsing is definitely not for me. But then I went to the other extreme for the next book I had written, and I started completely plotting from that point on. And after 5 years of doing them, like, wait a second, the fun, it's missing. I gotta get it back. So pantsing seems to be a good solution. Question number 5. Are you self-published, traditionally published, or yet to be published? I am yet to be published when it comes to writing my first novel, but I have self-published a co-written novel years and years ago. I've also self-published like a little art table book called Meraki. It's like a photography art book which features like these really obscure but beautiful words around the world, because I'm a foreign language nerd. Those two things, I did them because I wanted to just kind of test the waters of self-publishing without writing like a novel. I learned a lot through that, so I'm glad I did that. My ultimate goal is to be a hybrid author, and I want to have my mystery series traditionally published and then self-publish shorter works like novellas, short stories that are works in progress. Yeah, and I like don't want to put all of my writing hopes and dreams and wishes into that one basket, especially with how chaotic the publishing industry seems. It's not to rant, but I just think it's just really important to diversify your income when it comes to writing especially, but just like in general. Like when it comes to the stock market, like the first thing they tell you is don't put all of your money in and buy one stock, like buy a bunch of stocks, diversify. So I think the same thing holds true for writing. Like if you have, you know, multiple writing streams of income, whether that's traditionally publishing, self-publishing, freelancing, beta reading services, whatever it is, having that seems to be a good decision, and that's probably the path that I'd like to take for myself. The next question is, this is number 6, what publishing company, literary agent, and printing company are you represented by or use? If you're not yet published, what is your dream publishing house and literary agent? The first part of that question, when it comes to traditionally publishing the mystery book that I'm working on, I still need to research publishing houses and literary agents. The only research that I've really done is when I go to the Barnes & Noble cafe to write sometimes. During my breaks, I'll leave the table and I'll go down the mystery aisle and I'll find books that sound similar, that have the similar vibe to the story that I'm writing, and I'll pick it up and I'll flip to the acknowledgement section in the back of the book. Like 9 out of 10 times, they'll write down the name of their literary agent, like as a thank you to them. And I'll take my phone out and I'll take a little screenshot of that book for like future reference. So that's the only research that I've done so far. What printing company are you represented by or use? When it comes to the self-publishing projects, I've used KDP for those. I think it's really easy to use, it's accessible, it's like the number one thing if you want to self-publish to use. I do wish there were other competitive options that were on the same level as Amazon KDP, but right now that's what I use. I also use it to make my own journals. Like the journal that I have right now, it's a shameless promo, but I love making my own journals. If you're interested in these journals, I will put the link to them in the description. Question number 7. What Authortube related videos can we expect to find on your channel? I really like the I tried writing like insert author's name here. It seems like a really cool experiment where I can test out what works for me and what doesn't work, and maybe I can be a guinea pig for somebody else. I also like those day in the life of a writer vlogs, which segments into creating content that's not directly related to Authortube, but in my brain it's indirectly related to Authortube, like Victorian letter writing and taking unaesthetic paperbacks from my shelf and transforming them into beautiful hardcovers, sewing my own book skirt, making the perfect cup of chai, just like bookish things like that. These are all things that I've done before, and so for me it would be really easy to make these kinds of videos. And also maybe some non-bookish creative content. And every single writer friend that I have seems to have these other creative outlets that sustains their writing and their creativity for writing in this indirect way. So I know it's not Authortube, but I would love to make content like that. And I love seeing other writers working on other creative projects beyond just writing. So, you know, I love seeing it and I would love to share that. I also have this running gag of an idea in my head, this series called I Should Be Writing, but instead I'm ... It's like procrastination one-on-one. I do this a lot. This would probably be the easiest type of videos to make content for because I'm just chronicling what's happening to me on a regular basis. I think I'd be very, very good at it. Like a few weeks ago, I should have been writing. I had a deadline that I had written down in my planner, like finish rough draft by end of this month. And what did I do instead? I went out, I bought some yarn, and I collected a dozen avocados, and I learned how to make avocado dye and dye this yarn so that I could teach myself how to crochet. The next week rolled along and I'm like, you know what? I should be writing, but I'm just gonna teach myself Russian. And I dusted off some old Russian books that I had, and I was practicing how to write and read in Cyrillic. But I still have no rough draft. Okay, question number 9. When did you start writing? I was 9 or 10 when I wrote my very first stories over summer vacation, and then when I was in high school, I joined my school's poetry club. But I didn't get into novel writing until I was 17 years old, and I remember the day so vividly because it was, I think, the last Harry Potter movie had come out, and I was just angsting so badly. I was just in my room like this on the floor just thinking about, like, wow, I'm off to college in a few months and there's no more Harry Potter movies. My childhood has ended. And I literally grew up with Harry Potter. When I was 10 years old, I had gotten into the series and Harry was 10. And then when the next book came out, I was the same age. And then when I went to watch Goblet and Fire, I was 15, just like Harry. And then when Harry was off to the world to fight the Death Eaters, I was off into the scary world of college. I'm like, oh my gosh, my childhood, these books that I loved, that I grew up with, it's done, the chapter is closed. As I was sitting there angsting, the thought hit me like, wait a second, the magic doesn't have to end. You can write your own book. You can continue this magical experience. So that's what I did. I started writing my first novel then and there. It was a terrible novel, very poorly written, poor characterization. It was like a Sailor, I think the idea was fun. It was like a Sailor Moon and Harry Potter crossover, but everything else was just very cringy. When I go back now and I see my old drafts, I'm like mortified. Like, I would never want anyone to read that. The next question is, what was the first story you ever wrote? The first story I ever wrote was when I was 9 or 10. It was essentially Sailor Moon fan fiction, but I didn't even know what the word fan fiction was back then. So this is what happened. It was summer vacation, so school had just gotten out. My family had just gotten a computer, and I was very new to the internet. So what I would do was I would Google random Sailor Moon pictures online, I would copy paste it to this Microsoft Word document, and I would try to form a story around those pictures. In this particular story, I remember the sailor Senshi were battling these group of villainesses, and one of the villains, Sailor Leadcrow, was battling Sailor Mars, aka Ray. And in the middle of the fight, there's this moment of realization between Crow and Ray, where they discovered their lost long mother and daughter, and Ray is like, finds out her name Ray is actually short for her real name, Raina. As Crow explains to her, I named you Raina because when you were a child, every time you cried, it reminded me of the rain. I know. Look, I was a melodramatic 9-year-old. What can I say? Number 10. What authors have inspired your writing the most? Arthur Conan Doyle has definitely inspired my love for mystery writing, and having that Sherlockian vibe that I try to emulate in my books. Also Dan Brown, ciphers, secret codes, hidden messages, and symbolism. Those are all things that I like to incorporate into my own writing. And J.K. Rowling, not so much now, but she was the one who got me into novel writing when I was 17 years old. Also, Deanna Raybourn is one of my favorite modern mystery writers, and her Veronica Speedwell series is so well written. It's witty, it has plenty of snark. I think one of the things I really picked up from Deanna Raybourn specifically is you can tell that she's having so much fun when she's writing these characters. And usually when the author is having fun, the reader is having fun reading them. So that's something that I definitely picked up from her. When I feel like my writing is getting stagnant or a little bit boring, I ask myself the question, well, how can I make the scene more fun? And usually, actually, no, always, when I ask that question, I end up getting much more dynamic scenes, much more interesting. You know, like, okay, fight scene, don't like writing fight scenes, not my cup of tea, but what if I insert a garter knife and the love interest has to make a swipe for it? I was talking to a friend about this a few weeks ago, about how even if the character's world is a complete hellscape, there needs to be some fun to be had. And number 11 is, do you schedule your writing sessions or simply get to writing whenever you find time? Both. I like to schedule one weekly writing session with a friend. Usually it'll be on weekends. When it comes to writing consistently, I find that having that one-on-one writing session, it keeps me from falling off of the writing bandwagon. An accountability partner is like godsend. Highly recommend them. 10 on 10. Fantastic. During weekdays though, I do write alone, but only if I have the time and the mental energy for it after work, because that doesn't usually happen. So very rarely am I writing every single day. Alrighty, question number 12. Do you write on computer, typewriter, or write everything by hand, or do you use a blend of those? And where do you write in general? While I like the aesthetics of using a typewriter, I prefer to use my laptop when it comes to drafting, and a complete blank piece of paper when it comes to brainstorming and plotting. But would love to get a typewriter for the aesthetic. Where do you write? I write mostly at home. On my bed. I have terrible posture. I can't sit normally when I write. And well, I just can't sit normally in general unless it's in public. Then I'm forced to sit like a normal human being. Now, if I'm really, really desperate for the words, I will drag myself to Barnes & Noble and sit there at the cafe with my laptop and write. And it's always been productive. I think the reason why is because it has to do with the effort of getting ready and going out, leaving your house. The effort of charging your laptop, packing your water bottle, packing something to eat, getting dressed, charging your phone. When you do all of these things and you finally get there, you're like, well, now I have to write because I went through all of these motions and all of this effort. So the final question for this tag is, What are you most looking forward to now that you're part of Authortube? Oh, that feels so nice to say. Just saying it just feels like that sense of community and belonging, and just to make genuine connections and friends. You know, I think that's really what we're all looking for when we join this community. First, also to document and share my creative journey with you guys, and also vice versa. Alrighty, well, that has been the Authortube Newbie Tag, and I'm so excited to see where this goes from here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys.